Mr. Dimitris Iliadis, a partner of KPMG and heading the Thessaloniki office. I'm greatly honored, and it is a great joy for me to moderate the first panel of this day with a view on the subject of the perspective of Northern Greece and the companies up there, in continuation of the approval by the European Commission of the National Plan, Recovery and Resilience Plan. I welcome, therefore, the two distinguished speakers and representatives of the local business community, Mr. Aristidis Zervas, who is Group CFO of Clayman Group, Hellas, and leader in the field of lifts with important presence, and Mr. Eftimis Kostadopoulos, General Manager of Akritas SA, one of the most important companies of the domestic wood industry. So I will address the same 4 questions to both discussants, and I would warmly ask you not to exceed 4 minutes per answer, so as to be able to observe the half an hour allocated to us. So I start with the first question from Mr. Kostadopoulos. Let me start with the first question. Do you consider that the Recovery and Resilience Plan, as proposed by Greece and approved by the European Commission, responds to the current social and economic situation of Greece? Good morning. First of all, allow me to thank for the honor bestowed to me to be amongst this panel in this forum. To be honest, 2 years ago, we were again with Aristidis in the very same forum, but the whole venue was open. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we cannot have this physical presence. I believe that I can express certain views which more or less will cover the other friends of the co-combatants, the combatants in entrepreneurship. I consider that, yes, it is towards the right direction, this specific recovery plan, because it lays the foundations to correct whatever was wrong in many sectors. We know that the Greek economy has many structural problems having to do with infrastructure, justice, the operation of public administration, the tax regime, education. Therefore, all these are extremely important for the day after. This framework, this new framework coming along, will help those structural problems, and along with investment incentives and financial instruments, will give a great boost to Greek economy over the next years, starting immediately. Thank you. Thank you. Same question addressed to Aristidis Zervas. Good morning, Dimitris. Good morning to all of you attending us. Thank you for inviting me to be here today. Now, Recovery Fund and whatever is embraced in that, it's an excellent initiative, an excellent plan. It was very much needed following the pandemic, so as to help the country boost it to go take one step beyond. But because because the enemy of good is the better, I would like to underscore certain things that could also be integrated. I think, first of all, that big companies, which, as it has been said, and I agree with that, are those that are more productive, more competitive, more efficient, and can be competitive in an international environment. And through the plan, there is an incentive for companies to grow even more. Those that are already big, they do not take a fair share from this plan. In other words, they could definitely get lower interest loans for their investments, but that's all. Subsidies, therefore, money gratis is minimal. Of course, it's very nice to have it allocated to green energy, IT, important things. But if we had something more for big companies, they would invest more because they will have the possibility, and therefore they will become even more competitive. And that would entail more jobs, which are very much needed, and more tax revenues, because they would be more profitable. Thank you for the answer. Now let us proceed to the second question, starting the other way around, starting by you, Mr. Zervas. Could you please tell me how you assess the changes proposed by the Recovery and Resilience Plan vis-à-vis the tax reform? And I would also like a comment on the reduction of the tax bracket, of the tax ratio. Well, taxation, of course, is a long history in Greece for many years. Now we're definitely in the right direction with a lower tax rate. Why? Because we are in a neighborhood surrounded by countries with far lower tax rate. Bulgaria has a flat tax, 10%. It may eventually rise to 15% if this global agreement comes into effect. We are 22, which will come in 20. It's okay. But the neighbor is at 10%. It's only half an hour drive from the border. So we must be competitive in our neighborhood. We are not Germany with big infrastructures and a big domestic market that doesn't care about taxation. It was also proven in the past that any time governments tried to increase the tax rate so as to increase tax revenues, they never attained that because the tax base shrinks. Therefore, when reducing the tax rate, we will have a broader tax basis. Companies will be able to invest, be more competitive, especially the big ones, which actually have to be absolutely transparent. We pay all the contributions, all our taxes, dues. Everything is in the light. Everything is clear. Finally, we would be interested on what the real tax rate is, the effective tax rate, so forth, which means that there are not many tax exemptions. We also have auditors that press us. So when we are under audit, in the past that was more potent but still valid, the specific budget that the auditor has that wants how much he will collect from the company. And he is always pressing for more from non-existent data. And I believe this creates a bad example. We should be frank, especially with the big companies, which we are not, of course, the devil. Big companies are not the devil. They pay higher contributions. Such a tactic doesn't help much. The ministry should view things and the service of revenues. There should be frankness from all sides. Thank you. Same question addressed to Mr. Kostadopoulos. I'll try to add a couple of things to what Aristidis has said. I agree absolutely with what he said. An important part in the tax regime has to do with stability. The direction of reducing tax rates is a very correct one, but equally important, perhaps more important, is the stability in those rates. Unfortunately, in Greece, we experience areas where due to the change of governments or due to the MOUs, there has never been any stability for quite almost a decade. It's very important for someone to invest and have a 5-10 year plan what he would be expecting. The tax mechanism, the tax authorities, is a critical ring in the growth chain. Has to do with competition, with public revenues, has to do with incentives. Therefore, it's very important, and I suppose has already been discussed and will be discussed in this forum, that technology can offer excellent perspectives, both with regard to the organization of tax administration, but also to become more client-centered, citizen-centered, if you like, and to improve the auditing mechanisms. This is important crossroads to exploit technology to the right direction. Thank you. And now we proceed to the third question. Starting with Mr. Konstantopoulos again. You see, I'll do it in alternation. Recently, the Prime Minister Mr. Mitsotakis announced that for all new edifices to be constructed from 2023 and onwards, oil boilers will be banned. At the same time, from 2025 and onwards, all new taxis entering the fleet in Athens and Thessaloniki, as well as the 1/3 of the leased fleet, has to be either electric powered or have zero emissions, pollutant emissions. It is obvious, therefore, that we are heading head on towards adopting clean forms of energy. Nevertheless, do you personally believe that those incentives introduced and announced to date will be able to sustain sufficiently green growth? Do you believe that something more is needed eventually? I believe we speak about a very important subject currently in the spotlight, and it is perhaps in the spotlight because what happened in Glasgow is not what we would expect. The issue of climate change is a priority that should have been handled years ago because it regards our survival. Things are that simple. I consider that the RRF and the goal set are towards the right direction, but unfortunately it's something that cannot be limited in the Greek boundaries. In order for the appropriate implementation of a plan and have a successful completion, we must have examined all parameters. Technology must be there. Necessary investments must be effected quickly and directly. As I know, there's a huge investment gap to attain those goals, while technology is still up to the point. So all that leads to be faced with energy crisis, as we saw during the pandemic. It is important not to lose the citizen, the consumers, the companies in this struggle. If this whole cost comes to burden the citizen, I'm afraid that soon we'll have reactions on the real ultimate goal having to do with the climate change and dealing with phenomena such as this. So it's very important to see this globally and have a feasible plan with the participation, wholehearted participation of all stakeholders, all involved parties, citizens included, of course. Thank you. Mr. Zervas, could you please give us your view on what additional perhaps would be needed? Gladly. I believe that this plan is indeed needed, is very important, and it is well elaborated now. How it will be implemented and whether those measures suffice either by the government or whether the citizens can stand them, I don't know. It's too soon to tell. As time goes by, I believe that all those technologies will become cheaper, and therefore natural gas boilers will be cheaper, and electric cars as well. I don't know what incentives will be offered or what kind of subsidies. In order not to blame governments and be the seeker side, we should not reach the reverse. Ask for heavy subsidies that the government, no matter what government, Greek or other, cannot pay. So we must find the golden rule so as to move towards that direction and the society to be able to uphold it and the government as well, and the finances, that is, of a country. Thank you. Now let us move forward to the fourth question. Again, we start now with Mr. Zervas, who was the last to address the third question. So, fourth and last, do you consider that the incentives announced, already discussed, in combination, combined with the transition of companies to the digital era, will substantially contribute to the enhancement of FDI in our country? Or actually both domestic investments or foreign investments? Well, definitely, yes. I believe that these incentives will be facilitating that growth. Especially the issue of digitization is extremely important. If any company does not follow this path, is doomed. We must forget how things used to be in the past, the tools we used to have, and the way we used to work. We must keep up pace. We must invest heavily in digitization, perhaps leaving other things behind, because this is the future. Digitization will make companies more competitive, stronger, and resilient to the various crises. So I believe that each company, regardless of size, must exploit those incentives offered so as to proceed to the day after. Thank you. Mr. Kostadopoulos, would you like to give us your view on this question? I consider it given that it will greatly help. What we must see is how we will be able to exploit the current conditions, which are perhaps unique over the last years. What do I mean by that? There is the recovery fund, there's the development law, there's the new NFSR. We must see how we can fully exploit and in combination of that, so as not to waste a dime. It is a golden opportunity to make a thrust ahead, solving problems pestering Greek economy for years and deal with the new conditions of competition, global competition. I believe that what we need is effort, coordination, streamlining from all the stakeholders, so not to waste any time at all. We have witnessed similar situations in the past where, unfortunately, our country was not up to the circumstances and the demands. It is a golden opportunity to exploit all the available tools so as to move ahead. Aristidis mentioned that beforehand. Currently, 60-70% of the RRF is allocated to green investments and technology. Digitization, if you like, upgrading of companies. It is extremely important for this part to be implemented on a right plan and on a timely schedule, because also we have very limited time schedule and the ailments of the Greek system are well known. Yes, all that well known. Yes, thank you both for this discussion. At this point, we complete this panel and have a nice day.